Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mike Colleen at MikeColleen.com. Today's video was inspired by a YouTube video that I just saw, and it's a TV series. I think it came out a few years ago, I believe 2019, and it's called The Good Doctor. The video I was watching was He is the Smart One. So The Good Doctor - He is the Smart One. So it's about an autistic doctor. He's young, but extremely brilliant, smart guy. And he's actually the one in the glasses here facing us. And basically what happens was they really overly challenged him more than they would a regular doctor who spoke normal. He spoke, perfect. You could understand him clearly, but he hesitated a little bit. You could tell he was not quite like the average person. And that's a very interesting word, the average person. So if you want to watch that video, that's fine. So it stimulated something because of the way they were treating him. And I think this is going to shock you. Okay, so I was in the hospital. I think I had an injury. I don't remember if it was my shoulder injury or what it was. This was a long time ago. So I was in the hallway. I just happened to be sitting near an office, and I heard this girl just screaming and really panicking and freaking out. So I just got up and was like, I'm kind of a take charge kind of guy when people are in trouble or something's wrong. So I just walked right in, and there was a doctor sitting at the desk just kind of staring at her, and I'm just going, what's going on? And he goes, well, she's this and she that. So here's what it is. She had said there's an upside down cross on the wall, and I kind of looked and I'm like, what are you talking about? And the doctor gave me this look like she's a little, how do I say this? So here's what it was. She turned out she was schizophrenic, or seemingly was. Okay, watch this. So I looked at him like, well, did you verify it? And he just kind of looked right back at me. So I just walked right over there, and I go, what are you talking about? She goes, right there's an upside down cross. Now, it turned out she was a highly abused person, and I found that out just after this. So what happened was I walked over there, and I was about 1.5 feet, 2 feet from the wall, and she pointed at it, and I'm like, oh, there is. And the doctor goes, there is? And I looked at him like, and in my mind I'm thinking, you didn't get your lazy ass out of the fucking chair and walk over here to verify it? And I didn't say that. I'm like, well, yeah. I go, well, why don't you come on over here and take a look? So what happened was he walked over and he goes, oh, there is. Oh, okay. And so all of a sudden she just calmed down. Now that I know what narcissist abuse is and how they gaslight you to the point where you don't know what's up, what's down, because this is what they do. You'll see something on the wall like, no, I don't see it. Not there. I'm not saying the doctor, he might have been narcissist. I don't know. But her family for sure gaslighted her. She was the empath of the family. So shortly after, the family walks in. So, okay, let me back up. So she calmed down when the doctor and I said, yeah, there is a cross up there. It was like a huge relief. Now, as I look back, I'm like, wow, she's been gaslighted to death. You could tell she was just begging for some kind of look, I'm seeing this on the wall. And everyone's like, oh, it's all in your mind. You're crazy, which is what narcissists do, right? And they also send you to psychiatrists and, oh, she's this and she's that, right? And so soon after, and I mean seconds after she calmed down and she sat down, the doctor's like, wow, I didn't even see that. He goes and sat down. Boom. The family walks in. Mother, father, and I think it was a brother and a sister. I don't remember if there's another one, but there's 4 or 5 people. And they just immediately went to, oh, she's crazy. Oh, she's this. Oh, she's that. Now you would think, well, if you had a brother or sister that was mentally ill, that you would be the calming factor, that you would be compassionate and loving. No, narcissist family, no. They're the bad one. They're the crazy. And immediately when I saw his family, I'm looking at these people like, these people are nuts. Like, these people are fucked up. I mean, it was clear as day. And what were they doing? They were basically devaluing her in front of the doctor, doing this, doing that. And I think, I'm trying to remember, I think there's something else that happened. I eventually just walked out of the room because, I wasn't part of the scene. In fact, I did walk out of the room because I was really disgusted by the family. But here's the other factor the doctor didn't take into account. The family was abusive towards her. It was clear as day. It was night. I mean, this is before I ever even knew what a narcissist was. This was decades ago. And so I remember I went back out in the hall, and I think I sat down, and eventually I think she came out and the doctor was talking to the family, and I told her, look, I don't think you're crazy. I think you've been told you're crazy. I think your doctors were told a bunch of bullshit about you. And I didn't use the word bullshit. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I said, I think you've really been railroaded, and I don't think you're crazy, etc. So what ended up happening, that one little verification shifted her life. So down the road, she got away from psychiatry. She got away from medicine. And she got away from her family. And all of a sudden, when I bumped into her a couple of years later, I didn't even recognize her. And she goes, hey, I'm that girl. You're that guy that helped me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And I was like, wow, like she looked a lot better, a lot healthy. Her eyes were clear, just glowing. Okay, now watch this. So there's something that I noticed. This was actually during a master practitioner course in Hawaii, NLP, master practitioner course of Ericksonian hypnosis. Was we speak different languages, and what I mean is we speak. It's called the predicate system. Now, don't let that word scare you, because it scared me for years. And it turns out it's just 4 words: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and auditory digital. Okay. So there's 4 languages that we speak. The visual language is see. They use words like see, picture, look. Now I'm pointing at my eye right now because it's visual. And there's 100 or more of each predicates, each system. So see, picture, look, bright, shiny, etc. Auditory is, and I'm pointing to my ear right now. Do you hear what I'm saying? Tell me, talk to me, communicate. That sounds right. Or for visual, they'd say that looks right, right? So auditory was the ones I just read off, and then the auditory phrase was, well, that rings a bell, or that sounds right. Now, a kinesthetic person would say touch and feel, because that's the kinesthetic language. They use words like, well, I can get a hold of that concept. That feels right. I can get that, and I have a good feeling about this. Whereas auditory digital people, they say that's when you're in your thinking brain and you're using your thinking language, which is, that's logical. That makes sense. That's the phrase auditory digital, or the word digital, is an auditory digital phrase / word. Okay? Let me think about that. And so they use computerized, digitalized words. So what happens is, you'll get a doctor, say in this case a psychiatrist, that's not visual. He's probably, a lot of doctors are very auditory and auditory digital. So here's what happens. If you use a different predicate system, they're like, you're crazy. You need to be on medication. So I remember the girl going, look, which is a visual predicate system. Now, you have to understand, on an unconscious level, if you haven't developed this system very well, you're going to ignore it. You're not going to acknowledge it. And you're probably not even going to like it. So I remember the doctor saying, well, she says she see, and he goes, sees an upside down cross. And I go, and he goes something like, she just doesn't make any sense, and she this, and I immediately picked up on the difference in their predicate systems. I was like, oh. Now here's what happens, believe it or not. But you can go to see a psychiatrist, and if you're using the system they're not using, they're going to look at you and go, oh, you must be crazy. So, okay, so a lot of visual people will visualize things in their mind, and they will literally say, like, well, in my mind's eye, the way I picture it or the way I see it is blah, blah, blah. Well, an auditory person, now let's say you're a psychiatrist. Oh, so, and then it'll be like, oh, so you're seeing things. Oh, okay, so in your mind's eye, you're visualizing. Oh, okay, yeah, we need a little lithium, a little Prozac, got a little bit of a downer here, got to give her sleeping pills. And this is what happens. It destroys people's lives. Now, on top of that, you get these doctors that, what do? Oh, this person's crazy because their family or friend or husband or wife said so. Therefore, boom, I put them in the box. And on top of that, now watch this. If you don't match their predicate system, their unconscious mind looks at you like, you're just weird. You don't make any sense. And, I don't understand you. So you're just a weirdo. And on top of it, you're put in a freaking box of crazy. And so they don't listen to you at all. And they just make an opinion in their mind, and because they have a doctorate degree up on the wall, I am God, and they say you're fucking split personality, schizophrenic, or whatever they call you, and they say, here's the medication, you have to take it. And so you're like, oh my God, right? And so here's what happened during the course. So fortunately, I had taken these courses before this incident, and I had picked up on a couple things like, wow, so that doctor's basically saying, because she's using the visual predicate. Now mind you, this doctor had never heard of the visual predicate system at this point. It was very new to society. In fact, today, most people have never heard of NLP, Neuro-linguistic programming. Like, what's that? And it blows my mind. So during the training, we had about 200 to 240, 250 people in the room. And a lot of them were doctors. They were medical doctors, psychologists, and psychiatrists. And when we were going through the 2-week Ericksonian hypnosis phase, I forget what stimulated this conversation, but I think Dr. Tad James, the trainer, was saying, like, a lot of doctors are trained to just see people as dis-ease and sick and wrong and mentally ill, and they just label them. And one of the things when we were learning about what hypnosis is and how the television is the most powerful form of hypnosis and how generally education period is a form of hypnosis, you could basically hear almost like a pin drop, because most of the doctors sat in the far back. And I remember looking back at the doctors and I'm kind of grinning because like, yep, you fuckers were hypnotized to just see everything as wrong and sick or sickness. So one of the good doctors raised his hand, a psychiatrist actually. It was a psychiatrist. And later on, a psychologist raised his hand and said the same thing. And he said, I have to tell you something. Like, we are literally taught, and it's conditioned into us over and over, that if you see someone scratch their face on the same side more than twice within the hour, then I forget what he said. It wasn't dissociative. It was... they write down something, nervous anxiety disorder or something like that. And then he brought up a little quirk, like if you did this more than once or twice, then we wrote that down as like a diagnosis and you needed medication. And Dr. Tad James goes, now do you realize they were literally just scratching their face? And everyone in the room just erupted in laughter. And when it got quiet, the doctor goes, honestly, yeah. He goes, but I've actually prescribed medication and medically diagnosed people with like mental illness, saying, hey, you've got this mental illness because you scratched your face 2 or more times. So let's take me, for example. If I go see a doctor, it could be anything, it could be a police officer, it could be anyone. And I notice they're not listening. Well, one thing I learned is like when you gain rapport with people, boom, they tune in, they listen, and it's like all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, man, they become like your best friend. So all I have to do is use the predicate system and do a couple other things to gain rapport. And they tune right. Like when you don't speak someone's unconscious predicate system, they look at you like you're an idiot. I've actually had people go, oh, you're an idiot. And it was simply because I used the kinesthetic language and they were using the auditory digital language. Because auditory digital people, obviously, they're the smart ones. No, it's just a different language. That's all it is. It doesn't make you smarter or dumber. Now let's switch this around. Let's say somebody is auditory and the doctor is, visual. All right. So the auditory person goes, well, I just, in my head, like when I talk to myself, I just hear this voice that says blah, 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 blah. The visual doctor, who's not an auditory person, is going to be like, what? You hear voices? You talk to yourself? Oh my God. We got to send you to the hospital and put you on schizophrenic medication. And yet, when you go to these NLP trainings, they tell you to talk to yourself in a positive manner. It's called internal dialogue. And I remember sitting there in the class going, wow, so here it's called internal dialogue, but over there with the psychiatrist, you're fucking crazy. And you know, it's funny because Dr. Ted James brought that up, and again, a couple of psychologists, psychiatrists raise their hand and go, honestly, we are literally taught that if people say certain things that we're just automatic, like, oh, we diagnose them as they're mentally ill, they need to be on medication. And all it is we're using different fucking predicate systems. It's kind of sad how we have these so-called professionals, which are bumbling and fumbling and stumbling and tripping all over themselves, and they are completely destroying people's lives. Not only labeling them, diagnosing them, because once people say, "Oh, you're schizophrenic," "Whoa, you're fuck you," and I don't blame people. You know, if you want to avoid someone who's truly schizophrenic, I don't blame you. I have no problem with that. But to sit there and label someone who's not just because they scratched their face twice, or because they said, "Well, you know, when I talk to myself, you know, inside," or talk to yourself inside where? Well, inside my head. Ooh, okay, got a crazy one here. It really is sad because. Now, here's the other thing. When I was sitting there during the training, I was kind of giggling. And the guy next to me, it was my roommate, Rob. He goes, "What are you laughing about?" I go, "Well, dude, this is what every coach I've ever had, from Little League Baseball to football to Babe Ruth baseball to high school football to whatever, had always told us. Say positive things to yourself inside, you know, talk positively and, you know, talk to yourself and all that stuff." But and not only that, but I remember, you know, when you watch college football games or professional football games, when they run through the tunnel, they've got all these big banners and stuff on the walls that say, you know, see the end goal, see yourself scoring a touchdown, see yourself, you know, tell yourself you can do it, and all this positive stuff. But whenever you get out of those fields, people are like, "Oh, so you believe in positive mantras, huh? Oh, so you're just going to repeat a series of words, it's going to work." And I remember even during a Tony Robbins seminar when he said, "Hey, take charge of your internal dialogue and say positive things." I had kind of, and the funny thing is I had a negative dialogue. Is, "Oh, wow, that's real, like, that's going to work. Oh, right, sure." Which was my negative dialogue. So one of the reasons why I chose this image is because in the TV or in the video, it shows all these little things slipping out, stacking up on top. And then there's, you know, all these images behind him of the brain. Well, he's visualizing this stuff. That's not up on the wall. That's just him, like, visualizing. And again, you could get an auditory doctor, auditory digital doctor, and you're saying, "Well, when I see these things in my mind," the doctor's going to go, "Wait, what did you say? So you see things? Oh, okay, you're fucking nuts." When it's like, no, you're not nuts at all. Or in this case, where the girl literally saw an upside down cross on the wall. It was a pencil. It was a lightly drawn upside down cross with a pencil. Now, I wouldn't even doubt if the damn doctor did that just to be a dick. I mean, you never know. There's a lot of narcissists in a lot of fields, okay? So the thing about it was like, I just walked in and just happened to hear the you know, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I just walked in. "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Right here." And she's crying, like begging me to just take a fucking look. And when I did, it completely shifted her mentality, her whole world. And she was like, "Whoa." And the doctor goes, oh, okay. And obviously when he himself got up and saw it, it broke his pattern of just labeling people and see, a label could become a filter. Like, you just, "Oh, you're that, okay, well, therefore you're just that way. No matter what you say, I'm going to view it as crazy or dumb or stupid or whatever." All right, so now I want to do a little, not disclaimer, but it's kind of like that. One thing I want to say is I do believe that psychiatry does have its place, especially if you're in an emergency situation to where you're about to kill yourself, or you're going to do something stupid, or I don't want to go into all the possibilities, but it does belong in under emergency situations if you really, really need the medication. Other than that, I really think you need to do healing work. And even if you are on medication, do the healing work long term. So one of the things that I loved about NLP is it's all about pattern interrupts, which take you out of your patterns. And patterns are basically filters where you're just in a pattern. This is just repeating. It's basically breaking you out of generalization and assumption. That's a huge, there's something we call map of the world. So map of the world is basically made up by your beliefs, your decisions you've made, like this is this, your values, your rules that you go by, and those are all filters, and you're not experiencing what's actually happening. You're actually filtering it through all these, there's a couple other filters, but you're filtering it through all these filters, and by the time it reaches you, you know, it's like you're not seeing the reality. Just like that doctor, he just was like, oh, she's been labeled as crazy, she's crazy. Oh, you seen upside down? Oh, sure. You see, okay, crazy person. He didn't even get off his lazy ass and walk over there and find out. But once he did, all of a sudden, you could see, he just like gave a double look, like, oh, his tone changed, which means he popped out of his map of the world. And that's one of the main things I love about NLP. There's more things other than map of the world that pop you out of that when you learn what it is and how to do it. Now here's another thing I want to add right onto that is that's what a Heyoka does. That's why Heyokas are backward. They call them the backwards people because they walk backwards, they think backwards. Because somebody says, oh, there's a cross on the wall, and the doctor's like, no, there's not. It's like, okay, so the doctor's saying, no, there's not. This woman is desperately pleading here. So I just walked right up to the wall and broke the pattern. And the doctor goes, oh, okay. So Heyokas will reverse things so you can see it from the other side and shift your perspective. And all of a sudden it opens up a whole new world. All right, so there's another thing I want to talk about. There's something called synesthesias. This was a really kind of revolutionary thing for me personally. There was a test that we took, and I'm not going to go too in depth because I want to kind of get this video done. So there's a test we took that let us know like what our levels were on visual, auditory, kinesthetic, auditory, digital, etc. And then we found out about synesthesias, where you could have a VK synesthesia, VA. Visual auditory, visual kinesthetic synesthesia, etc. And that's when I first found out. They're like, the trainer was like, you know, Michael, you have a very strong VK synesthesia. You feel things before you even consciously realize you're seeing them. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? He goes, you ever notice like you'll be in a good mood and then all of a sudden you'll just be really sad or anxiety? I'm like, yeah. I go, that happens all the time. He goes, well, because you have a VK synesthesia, you're feeling what you're seeing. And so, like, let's take this image. This doctor here visualizes things very, very well. I have an extremely powerful visualization ability, and it's because I've been doing it since I was a kid. I started competing in sports when I was like 4 years old, and it was all about visualizing, and I do it to this day. I can't help it. So the thing that this training helped me realize was like, you know, Michael, a lot of people can't do that. They don't have that ability. They've never developed it to that level. And I started going, so is that why some people, like, yeah, that's why some people are really good. Oh, yeah, why are some people good in sports and some aren't? So it does depend on the sport. So let's take fast, violent impact sports such as football. Another one they used was fighter jet pilots, okay? See, VK synesthesia is like a really quick strategy, like boom, it's like one step. So if you're in a fighter jet and you're going, I don't know how, I'm going to make this up, I guess 400 miles an hour, however fast they fly when they're fighting, 300 miles an hour, maybe faster. And it's like you have to choose whether you're going to fire, turn, not fire, do a bomb. You don't have time. Okay, so a strategy will be like visual. I have to see it, and then I have to think about it, which is auditory digital, and then I have to say to myself, which is auditory internal. So that's 1, 2, 3 steps, and then I have to get a good feeling, and then it has to match another feeling from the past. Like, dude, that's a long strategy. You are effing dead. You don't have time. You got to see it, feel it, shoot. In fact, it's not even see it then feel it. It's see, feel at the same time. Like boom, shoot. And when they started to describe that, I'm kind of grinning, and Dr. Tad James looks at me. He goes, now do you understand why you're so good in sports? I was like, yeah. I go, there's no thinking. And I literally say that to my, not classmates, but to my teammates. And they're like, well, how do you know what to do? I'm like, I just feel it. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, there's no thinking. And I remember a teammate of mine in football goes like, well, what are you thinking when the ball's handed off to you? And I looked at him like he was insane. I didn't go thinking. I'm not thinking anything. I'm just going with the flow, man. I'm just running. Another thing that I noticed about me is I tend to learn really, really fast, like insanely fast. Like I remember my first year in wrestling, this guy beat me the very first day of wrestling practice. And it took me 10 days or less, maybe not, maybe it was 7 days of practice, and I just pinned him on his back, and he was like, what the fuck? He'd been wrestling for like 5 years at that point. Maybe, actually, I think it was more, he was a senior, so maybe 6 or 7 years. And he was like, what the fuck? And another thing I learned when it comes to like NLP psychology, being around Tony Robbins, I absorb stuff. It's just like, boom, it's just like this, super fast. So I learned things fast, I gained knowledge super fast, and I also gained physical abilities, whether it's sports or learning how to do NLP techniques or whatever. So what I'm leading up to is some of you might have these synesthesias. All right, I'm going to go really fast about how the human brain develops. So we're going to go all the way back to the caveman era. I'm not going to do a perfect timeline. But basically, we started out with this really rudimentary brain. So I'm going to call it the reptilian brain for now. I don't know if that's necessarily the whole truth. But let's just say, because the reptilian brain we all still have. That's where our mating system is and our fight and flight system, survival system to stay alive is. So that was literally, it's the instinctual brain. There's no thinking going on at all. There's no strategies. It's just instinctual. It's already pre-wired to survive. That's it. So that's what cavemen and cavewomen were mostly using back in the day. But then we began to develop a left brain, right? A logical processor. And then we began to develop a right brain. So we're talking thousands and thousands of years. Now you might think, yeah, that's a human brain, which, because yeah, actually technically it is. But then there was another advancement, and there was a sheath, a thin, like, clear sheath. I don't know if I should say clear, that would make connections. Oh, no. Before that, there became a connection between the left hemisphere and the right. So there's a bundle of nerves called the corpus callosum that connects the left side to the right side. When we did that, boom, all of a sudden massive information was being transferred from left to right, right to left. Whereas before it was either reptilian brain to left brain or reptilian brain to right brain. So it was a better brain, but it still was fairly slow. Once we added that corpus callosum, all of a sudden, boom, there was a huge advancement. Now we had more information transferring from one part of the brain to the other part of the brain. And then thousands and thousands, well, I don't know if thousands and thousands, but thousands and thousands of years later, there was a sheath that began to grow across the entire brain, where now you can connect the front lobe, right lobe to the rear left brain, or the left front lobe to the right front brain, or like you had all this like sheath, like all these connections, and all of a sudden we advanced. Now, on top of this, you have synesthesias. Some people have them, but most people do not. So these are people like, okay, oh God, I just forgot his name. He calls himself Yeezy. He was married to Kim Kardashian, Kanye West. He came out and said he had an auditory, I think it was an auditory visual synesthesia, where he could literally see the notation or see the colors of the music and sound. Like I think he can see the sound. Now most people are like, oh no, he's just crazy. No. He has a different neurological connection than most people to a certain system, okay? So years later, I found out that I had a visual auditory synesthesia, okay? So I had VK synesthesia, VA, which makes me a fairly sensitive person, okay? Now, a lot of people think, oh, well, you're not sensitive. I'm a very sensitive person, all right? Now, what this does, not only allows me to absorb knowledge, absorb information, it allows me to learn fast. It also allows me to absorb and receive someone's where they're at emotionally. So they may not even say something or even talk about a certain issue, but I will tell them what's going on inside. And they're like, how do you know that? I was like, oh, I can feel it. And they're like, what are you talking about? I can feel it. Again, a lot of people can't do this. This is why When I'm really in tune with someone, I can literally tell them what they're thinking. I will literally tell them sometimes word for word what they're thinking. They're like, how in the hell do you know that? It's because I'm so in tune with their body. It's like I'm receiving information like kind of like a radio, the way a radio receives it through the air, so to speak. Or you could say Wi-Fi. So what I'm really ultimately leading up to is if you're a sensitive person, you're probably a very highly intelligent person. Now you have to, and this also, it reveals that, wow, there are people that are actually empaths that actually can tune into stuff. And the other people, like, they're like, what are you talking about? And they think it's wooey-fooey because they don't have the ability to do it. But some of them do. They've just never quieted their mind or learned how to tune into that system that they have in a way that becomes clear. Now myself, I was wired this way my whole life. And as I look back, it's like, wow, I used to do that when I was a kid. And I just thought it was normal. I didn't know it was anything special. And it wasn't until I went to a lot of trainings over and over and, you know, people that were really tuned in and trained in this stuff would be like, you know, Michael, you've got a VK synesthesia. This is a blessing. And they would say, like, Michael, this is not a curse. Because I used to feel so much pain and anxiety until I learned how to really ground myself emotionally. That is the ultimate source. So now all of a sudden, it's literally like electricity. If you don't ground your car's electricity or your house's electricity, there's going to be sparks and electricity flying all over the place, and it's going to shock you and it's going to hurt. It's the same thing with sensitive people. You have to learn how to ground yourself emotionally. And once you learn how to energetically ground yourself, all of a sudden you can receive all this information in mass, and it makes sense. It becomes very clear, and you can see what's going on with someone, and thus you can begin to help them. Now, guess who else is very highly sensitive, or excuse me, passed away, but was a very highly sensitive person. It's actually very well written about and documented. Albert Einstein, one of the smartest men on the planet, was a very, very socially sensitive person, sensitive what people would say. So he would pretty much only go out when he was surrounded by a group of friends, about 4 or 5 people. So they literally could physically surround him to comfort him. All right, so let's wrap it up with this. So what you have to realize is the majority of people are average. They can't even relate to people who are left and right brain. Most people can't relate to right brain people at all. And let alone with people who have synesthesias, whether it's one or more like I have. They will look at you and think there's something just different about you, and you're almost like you're just wrong for being alive or for being that way, okay? They'll even look at you and say, well, that doesn't make any sense. And therefore they'll think, well, you're stupid, because they can't understand what you're saying. Now, there is one thing I loved about NLP was, it was early on, like the first, second, or third day of the training, they're like, look, one of the things Dr. Bandler and Grinder realized was that psychiatrists and psychologists had such a highly developed, specialized language that when they were talking to the clients literally like, what are you talking about? Like, they couldn't understand them. And so the doctor felt superior. I'm intelligent. I speak all these psychiatric, psychological words that this person's never heard of. Therefore, I'm intelligent. But therefore, you lost a gap. You have a gap of communication, and now you're not helping your client. So it became just do as I'm telling you. I'm God. I'm a doctor. Rawr. And so what Dr. Bandler and Grinder did, which I absolutely loved, was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to break these terms down, and we're going to talk to people on their level in a way that they can understand. A huge chunk of NLP, if you go all the way through all the trainings, is learning how to communicate and teach things in a way that that person will absolutely understand. And that is one of the greatest gifts that I could say that I received from NLP, is learning how to talk to someone, listen to them enough, what predicate system they're using, you know, what are they saying on an unconscious level. I mean, there's a lot to it, and then repeating it back to them in a way that they can understand you. It can be really hard if you are an empath or a highly attuned person and the people around you aren't. They're like, oh, what's the big deal? And then on top of it, they think that you're dumb because you don't have group think. So you've got all these people that are sheep or cows or herds, and because the rest of the sheep or whatever thinks something, oh, therefore this must be right, and you're the one person over here saying, well, no, this isn't right at all, let me prove it to you. So they're going to look at you like, well, but we all think this, therefore we're right. No, that doesn't mean you're right, just because a group of people think something. So, my friends, it's going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of people. Okay, watch this. And I think I already said it, but I'm going to kind of repeat it or say it more, emphasize it more. There's going to be a lot of people where they literally can't understand what you're saying, especially in the beginning. And because you communicate in a way that they don't, they're going to look at you like, oh, well, this person's just either wrong or they're dumb or whatever, when it turns out you were right the whole time. And they were just a bunch of idiots. Okay, I'm just being a smartass right now. But there is some truth to that. So let's take the guy in this video, in the image we're looking at. He's autistic, but here's the thing. Autistic people can be extremely intelligent and talented in different areas. Some people are extremely talented when it comes to music. I don't know if it was Mozart or one of those guys, but I believe one of them was considered to be autistic. Okay, but did just amazing work. Like how I believe it was Mozart, where they said he literally just took the piano. It's like it was. I think someone said at one point he was basically self-taught, and he just absorbed the information. He just knew how to play the piano, and he picked up on it really fast. So take this guy here. Well, okay, here's what I'm trying to say. So you got this room or this hospital full of doctors, and they always meet together. And one thing was, they were like, one of the doctors that was kind of like, when this kid, autistic kid, was brought in, was really hard on him. And he was kind of his, like, the person who decided whether he stayed or didn't or was up to par. And he was really harsh, just unfairly harsh. Simply because, well, he's different. He talks different. He doesn't talk like the rest of us talk, so he's different. And therefore, he must not be smart. And, well, this kid ended up graduating from a better college with higher grades, was a much better surgeon. Like, everything about him was way better than this doctor. But the problem is, everyone in the room, all the other doctors, like, yeah, this guy's kind of weird. I don't know. Is this safe? Should we be letting this guy be a surgeon? Like, what are we doing here? Turns out he was the better, not only does it turn out they knew he was the better surgeon, but because he was different, they wanted to shut him down. So if you're a smart person, a talented person, the average people, again, which is the majority of people, they are not going to, it's kind of weird because you could win Super Bowl after Super Bowl, or event after event, and they're just kind of like, yeah, he's not very good. Like, what are you talking about? He beat your ass in that competition. What do you mean he's not very good? He's better than you. And then their brain goes, yeah, but my mind just looks at him differently, like he's not one of us. Yeah, I know, he's better than you. So I'm going to wrap it up with this. So I had a friend from when I was a kid, when I lived in Wisconsin, and he called me up years and years later when we were adults, and he always thought he was the smart person, but he really wasn't. He got average, maybe above average grades, but that was about it. Just was not even a socially smart person, but he always tried to act like he was. And so I remember we were having a conversation about something. I don't remember what it was. It might have been about energy healing or something like that. And he's like, well, I don't believe that, and that, that's not, because that's not possible. And I was like, wait, what? How do you know? Like, where did you study this? He goes, well, I've never studied that. I'm like, well, so how do you know? He's, oh, well, and he goes, because I can't do it, therefore nobody can do it. And I went, oh, so since you can't do something, no one else can do it. Well, let me ask you a question. If you were on a football field, a professional NFL team in the United States, and you were getting rushed, and you were the quarterback by these 250, 300-pound defensive linemen and outside linebackers, Lawrence Taylor, and all this stuff, can you throw the football while you're scrambling 100 yards or 75 yards? He goes, well, no, of course not. I go, about how far do you think you could throw it? He goes, I could probably throw it about 40 yards. I'm like, oh, so that means Joe Montana couldn't throw the ball 75 yards. Neither could Roger Staubach or Dak Prescott. And I just start naming off all, or Tom Brady, or whatever. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I go, well, since you can't do it, no one else can do it. And he got really like, oh, I see what you're saying. I go, yeah. Some people have dedicated their lives to things that you haven't. And they have developed muscles, coordination, technique. And they can do things that you can't. And that doesn't mean that because you can't do it, then no one else can do it. He just went dead silent. Some people are taller. Some people are faster. Some people have more fast twitch nerve fiber in their muscles, etc. Some people have long twitch, which is good for jogging and for long distance. I mean, whether they developed, because you can develop over the years. If you practice sprints again and again and powerlifting and quick explosive bursts, you're going to get that fast twitch nerve fiber. It's going to grow and build. Same thing with a long twitch fiber. You do long distance running, you do things stretching a lot, and all these things that develop that. So there's a development part. There's you just happen to be 3 inches taller, your legs are a little longer, or whatever. Some people's brains are neurologically have more neurological connections. Like, here's a scientific fact. Women generally tend to have more neurological connections between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. This isn't me making this up. This is a scientific fact. Go to your local college, go to your local neurosurgeon and ask. Look it up. No, Mr. Mike, I want to live by my limitations and assumptions. I would like to believe that we are finally coming to a point in time where we are starting to realize that just because someone has skills that you don't or abilities that you don't doesn't mean that it's your job to hold them back. I believe that we are starting to realize wait a minute, some autistic people can function at a very high level in some jobs, careers, and things that are on the planet. Just because they're a little different, quirky, doesn't mean that we should block them or knock them down. Believe it or not, people, but this awakening that we're having, we are finally coming out of the Dark Ages. Most people believe, well, the Dark Ages was back like in 1100, 12, 1300, etc. No. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, we were in the Dark Ages. We are just now finally waking up and literally seeing the light. Do you know why people will cut someone down because they're autistic, or because literally not even, they could be a socially normal person and the people around them are just intimidated because, well, this person got straight. Okay, there was we had a doctor, Dr. Walters. He was an English professor, and our high school paid him a lot of money. I think back then, it was like $100,000 a year to be a teacher at a high school. And then we had another math teacher, and I cannot remember his name, but nobody got an A in his class, a straight A in his class, or Dr. Walters. Well, I had both their classes, same semester, plus football, plus all the other stuff, and I got all A's that semester. And I remember this one girl grabbed my report card out of my hand. We were out on the campus at break, and she was telling people. She didn't say I was stupid, but it was basically the essential. Oh, Mike, he's not very smart, blah, blah, blah. She goes, here, give me a report card. And I go, well, what are you doing? And she goes, oh, well, he got an A in this and an A in, wait, he got an A plus in Dr. Walt. Wait, what? No one gets an A. Like, literally nobody, except for me and Will Trim that year. And then I got he got an A plus in, I forget the math class teacher. And she was like, what the fuck? And she was like, oh my God. And everyone like, really? Are you serious? And someone goes, and then I don't know if it was my friend Sean Grego, but someone just blurts out, yeah, Mike's actually the smartest guy in school. He's really smart, blah, blah, blah. And people are like, wait, what? All because I was smarter than them. In their eyes, well, you're different, therefore you must be dumb. You bunch of dumbasses. So what I believe is happening is we are finally allowing people to sprout, to grow, to spread their wings, and to be intelligent and talented. Do you know who's been ruling us for the last 10,000 plus years? I don't know if that's right. How many thousands of years it's been? Maybe 2,000 plus. I don't know exact numbers. Dumb people. Dumb people right now are the heads of our nations. I mean, we're talking dumb people. Senators, congressmen, leaders, presidents, kings, queens. These are people who have used violence, force, imprisonment, and torture, and worse, to intimidate us, to shut our brains down, to conform, to be stupid. And in return, a lot of people, when they see someone that's smarter than them, they shut them down. They pull them down. They knock them down. They do everything in their power. Because it's almost like it's built into a lot of people. It's like, well, this is the way we're trained and conditioned. You're not like us, therefore you're wrong, and therefore you're bad. It's like, really, what are you talking about? Albert Einstein did a lot of good for mankind. Remember, it's not always about being an intellectual or being smart. Sometimes you might have a musical talent that makes you just unbelievably talented. You might have a physical talent, a sports, who knows, could be comedy, it could be math, it could be science, it could be being a neurosurgeon. My point being is we are all different, and that's on purpose, and that's a good thing. So don't sit there and say, oh, I'm not smart like you, or I can't throw a football as far as you. Fine. Then find what your talent is. You need to look around, and you know what the best way to do it is? Find not even find, but just follow your interest. That's what they say when they say follow your bliss for years. Like, what do you mean follow my bliss? What the hell does that mean? It literally means you want to go get an ice cream? Go get an ice cream. You want to go lift weights? Go lift weights. You know, it's like, go lift weights, and after 2 or 3 months, you're like, man, I really don't like this. Then don't do it. Go do something else. That's how you know. Follow your bliss. You're like, man, I really don't like playing the guitar. So stop. Go do something else. That's what it means to follow your bliss. What do you want to do? And all of a sudden, you're going to realize, like, wow, I've got a lot of talent in this area. Yeah, because you tend to really like things that you're talented at naturally without even thinking or trying to figure it out. Just go do what you want. Like, what do you want to do? I want to go watch the race car, go to the racetrack and watch the cars race. Go do what you want. That's how you're going to find out. All right. God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Live your life to the fullest. God bless you.